Well, this is crazy. I'm going to do an impression of myself from a year ago. Well, it's official. This is it. I don't know. Was that any good? I don't know. It's an impression of myself, so I guess it's like the most spot on it could possibly be. Anyway, yeah, it's official. We are 1 year in to my podcast, the Jimmy Mullen Podcast. In the blink of an eye, an entire year has gone by. And I got to be honest, I've had such a good time making these in the last year. I honestly, I don't know what to say. It's this year has gone by so fast, and we're already here. Pretty like to the exact date. I'm uploading this on December 22nd, 2022. I released the first episode of this podcast on December 22nd, 2021. And I followed it up the next day with episode 2. That was the first of the many guest episodes that I've done over the past year. And I got to say, I think I've said it a couple times throughout the course of this year, but I have honestly not been this happy with content creation from myself in years. I don't remember the last time I felt this good about making YouTube videos. There was a bit of that in like 2017 with the vlogs that you can still currently watch on my main channel. There's a lot of that there, but there was also a bit of a period in that year where I kind of like wanted to see if I could like get a bunch of views on a video or something. And I mean, like I had a bit of a boost. I got a shout out from Black Screen TV, along with I got a shout out from Relax on his Discord server. So I mean, like there was a bit of a boost there. I went up to I had I think, I don't know, a little under 50 subs on that channel at the start of 2017. And then by the summer I had over 300, which was like a crazy amount of subscribers that even back to my original YouTube channel, by the time that channel went and hit its demise, it was like just over 350. And that was throughout the course of 2 years. Fast forward to now, my current main YouTube channel is at just over 550 subscribers, and this podcast channel is just over 150. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has supported this podcast in the last year. It's been something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and going in, I had no expectations at all. I sent it out to a couple friends. I sent it out to some coworkers from the job I was in the middle of leaving, and I said, hey, I'm gonna, if you give a shit, I'm doing a podcast. And I got a lot of overwhelming support from tons of people that just wanted to see me thrive and do my thing. And I really appreciate that. For those of you who've stuck around, if you were just here in the beginning, or if I sent the link to this episode out to you, or if you've never seen one of them, thank you for taking time out of your day nonetheless. I really appreciate you. This has also been very therapeutic for me because, especially within the last couple of years, with the pandemic and, my life drastically changing right out of high school, I had to move to another town where I didn't know anybody. And frankly, I still don't, even after 3.5 years. The only people I really know are the people I've worked with, as well as my brother's friends. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing fine. I think this podcast is definitely a good way to be able to see my friends that I haven't seen since high school, and I've been able to not only reconnect with people that I went to school with, but also strengthen those connections. I'm a lot closer with some of these people than I was 3 years ago. Not to mention the new people that I've met in the last year. I've met some really great people. I've made some really great connections and all sorts of things like that. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has stuck around, and also the people I've met this year. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being awesome. You guys are the best. Something I constantly wonder, not just to be held up on the past, and that's not what I'm trying to say here. It's more of just a what if kind of thing in my mind. What if I started this podcast a year prior? Or what if I started the podcast 2 years prior, or even back in high school or something? Because I actually had this podcast idea since 2017. So, about 5 years at this point. And it went through a bunch of different stages of like, okay, am I going to do a solo thing, or am I going to do it with a friend and have like us co-host the podcast? That was like the main idea, because I guess I just didn't have enough confidence in myself that I could like hold down my own podcast. So I was like, I got to do it with a friend or something. And it ended up just, I want to do it with one person, and then that didn't pan out because I moved and all that other stuff. And then I was going to do it with two other people, and then they moved, and it was going to be the whole thing. I at one point was going to do a podcast with Liam and John, and that ended up just not happening because Liam moved, and then I moved, and then it just became a thing. Like, okay, we're not going to see each other as often, so if we want to be consistent with this, we'd have to really bang out like a ton of episodes. And I was really the only driving force at the end of the day, with a lot of that. And I would have, regardless of who I would have been doing it with, I most likely would have been doing the work anyway. So I finally realized, like, what was it? I've seen solo podcasts do pretty well. Some people are able to really thrive with that, and I thought, hey, why don't I give it a shot? If this is going to be the way I come back to making YouTube videos after being dormant for about 2 years, this might be the way to do it. And honestly, I don't think I've ever been this consistent either with making content either. I put out a podcast nearly every week this past year. I'm ending off 2022 with just over 50 episodes. And mind you, there are 52 weeks in a year. By the time this year ends, there will be 55 total episodes of the podcast. So, yeah, there's a lot there. In regards to looking back, like I mentioned, it makes me wonder, like, how far along would I be? Maybe would I have blown up or something, or had a viral moment or anything? And I've had a couple of moments even this year with doing it. For one, I had a TikTok that surpassed over 200,000 views. So shout out to Leif for contributing to that clip. We were just talking about how K-pop stans found Joji, and they found out he was Filthy Frank prior to being Joji, and they proceeded to try and cancel him and completely missed the point of the sarcasm and the all the shit surrounding Filthy Frank, and the whole purpose of Filthy Frank basically just being the worst person possible. It flew right over their head. I got a lot of nice comments on that TikTok, as well as many of the other TikTok clips I've posted in the last year. And honestly, going in, I didn't even think about making clips like that. And then I realized, like, that's kind of the way to do it on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. I ended in the last year, I've seen tons of different podcasts do clips like in that style and all that. And I'm like, all right, I might as well just make clips out of my podcast. And I think I've had some pretty great moments. Like I said, the clip about Joji that has over 200,000 views. I have ones that also have cracked a couple thousand views. One of the ones I did with Cole Parent, I think it has like 45,000, something along the lines of that. A couple of them have hit 10K. So if you've come from those clips, I just want to say thank you for sticking around and helping me in celebrating this milestone. So to celebrate this anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of this podcast, I figured we'd take a look back at the first 52 episodes of the podcast. And I'll give you a bit of an insight to most of them. And I'm also going to address something that I've kind of been, not really addressing. I think I got like one comment asking about it, and I didn't answer the comment because I figured I might as well just explain it in something like this. I'm sure, and then like the people around me, they understand the situation. So I'm gonna address that a little later on. But I figured, this episode we're gonna take a look back, and I'm also going to give you a peek into the future, as I have a little thing prepared to show you all, along with an announcement. So I hope you guys are excited for that. So without further ado, we are going to get into the first 52 episodes. I have the video list on my phone here, and I'm just going to go through each of them, and I'm going to talk about maybe some behind-the-scenes stuff with that, the coordination maybe, or even just the topics I talked about if it's a solo. And yeah, so to start out, the first episode released 1 year ago today. It was like 25 minutes long. It was just a video of me saying, hey, this is my podcast. I also briefly touched on my absence from making YouTube content for about 2 years and why that happened and all sorts of stuff like that. And I've talked about that like many times throughout the podcast in the last year. But yeah, it was just like an introductory thing and whatnot. So there's that. I like I said, I had no idea what to expect with that. And to this day, it is the most popular episode of the podcast. It's got just over 340 views, with 26 likes and 16 comments, some of those being replies from myself. But it's easily the most popular episode to date. And I'm really proud of that. Like to this day, the fact that it's number one is still number one. That's pretty cool to me. There have been a couple of episodes that have come pretty close, but have yet to beat it. But maybe in the future we'll see. We'll see how long it takes for an episode to beat episode 1. I don't really know. We'll just have to wait and see. In regards to episode 2, this is actually, technically speaking, my first podcast I ever did, because I recorded it before I did episode 1. In preparation that I would post it as episode 2, because obviously I'm not going to start out my podcast with just like 3 of my friends and talking about a bunch of things. Episode 1 was like an introduction to what's to come. Episode 2 was a peek into guest episodes and what they could be about. Now the reason that was actually recorded at my friend John's house and not my house here was because my brother had COVID. So obviously, I didn't want to be bringing my friends into my house, possibly giving them COVID or anything along the lines of that. This was also, it was like right after vaccines were distributed, but not everyone had them yet. And on top of that, it was winter. We were in the cold months. Sicknesses spread a lot easier in the winter months. So I figured, to be safe and all that, I'll just bring all my equipment to John's house and, I'll sleep there and we'll go to the game the next morning. So that's what we did. It was pretty jank. I'm not going to lie. Frankly, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had just gotten this Rodecaster. This camera was pretty much brand new. I'd never even set up all 4 microphones or anything. I had actually forgotten my SD card at home, so we had to run to Staples and grab another one. So I was a little unprepared. Unfortunately, and you can kind of tell with that podcast, there was also a lot that I had to cut out. So, I was learning. It was a lot of experimentation. And obviously, for the first podcast, not everything's going to go great. And I still know that there's a lot that I can improve on. And I think I've improved a lot in the last year. But yeah, that's kind of like the background with that. So, as for what we talked about, we kind of, we just talked about, they talked about sports for a little bit. We talked about world traveling. We talked about the Jets game we were going to the next day, which was a lot of fun. Despite our seats being very far away and high up from the stadium, I couldn't really tell what was going on. Not to mention, I'm not like someone who is very knowledgeable on football, so I didn't really understand it to begin with. I was just kind of there for the culture. I ended up paying like $12 for a bottle of beer. I think it was about 20. Honestly, it was a rip off. But then again, that's stadium money. You're gonna be ripped off. But yeah, that was that. I had a lot of fun there, and I ended up getting John and Liam on each. John I got on for 2 more episodes, technically 3 because he's in the background of the other episode with Liam, and that was also at his house. But we'll get to that. Wendell I have not had on again, but I do plan on getting him on at some point in the near future. So Wendell, if you're watching this, I know you've been wanting to do one. Let's do it. Let's fucking do it, man. Episode 3 was the first of the solo episodes, other than the first, and it was a bit of a special one because it was the last episode of 2021. So I decided I would take a look back at the last year of movies, music, video games, and all the stuff I really enjoyed consuming throughout the year of 2021. And that was pretty much it. It rounded out at just under an hour, and I think I did pretty good with that. Looking back on that episode, I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I feel like doing a top 10 and having number 10 be Black Widow and then the other movies being not as great, honestly shows that I did not watch enough movies in 2021, at least new releases. And I can also say the same for this year as well. You'll see that in episode 55. But yeah, there was a lot in 2021, and I even had a whole section where I talked about the MCU. I'm probably not going to do the same for 2022. I think it was just because there was a shit ton of stuff with Marvel in 2021 because there was nothing in 2020. So I just wanted to really just take that time and just talk about the MCU because I was like obsessed with it. And I mean, like, I still really enjoy it. I'm just, I don't know. I've tried to expand my interest to other things in the last year, so I have more to talk about here on the podcast. Like I've done, like I started doing. I'm going to be covering every season of Breaking Bad, so that's a prime example. And I plan on expanding that to other things in the future. But yeah, that was episode 3. After this was episode 4, which came out a couple weeks into 2022, as I'd gotten sick and a lot of stuff was going on in those couple weeks. So unfortunately, I went a couple weeks without releasing one. But episode 4 was the first of my little solo news kind of things. I'm still working on a name for that because I kind of want to. I'm thinking maybe like Jimmy Rambles or something like that. Maybe like something along the lines of that. Where it's just me rambling about things in the entertainment industry that are, you know, whether it's news or a new movie or a new album that's come out that has piqued my interest, and I want to give my thoughts on it. And I've done a bunch of those over the past year. Honestly, I think I should have done more because I went a little while without doing them, and we'll get to that. But this one specifically, I talked about my thoughts on Dawn FM, which was the new album from The Weeknd that had just come out. Also, the first trailer for Moon Knight, which I thought was pretty significant because it was the first of the Disney Plus MCU shows to not be about an already introduced or established character in the MCU. Because before we had WandaVision, we had Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki, and What If was about everything we already knew, but with new twists on them, and Hawkeye. So these were characters we already had established in the movies. So having Moon Knight was more interesting because of the fact that it was a completely new character to the MCU, which we hadn't gotten yet. At this point, we've now gotten Miss Marvel, and we've gotten She-Hulk, and there's going to be other stuff in 2023 and beyond. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting to at least talk about that trailer because it was the first of the MCU shows to not be about an already established character in the films. So that was that. And then I also talked about Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard for like, I think it was like, what was it, like $69 million or not million, $1 billion. That was a lot of money. So I was like, Jesus Christ, like that's they bought Call of Duty, they bought Overwatch, World of Warcraft, all these different IPs. It was crazy. So I wanted to highlight that in there. That one was the shortest by far at like 22 minutes. Of course, I beat that with episode 41. I think it was 41. Yeah, we'll get to it though. Episode 5 was the next of the guest episodes. This one featured my brother Brian, along with my cousins Lily and Caroline. They were really interested in coming on the podcast, so I was like, "Fuck it, why not?" And I really wanted to get my brother on because a lot of stuff in the last couple of years. He's now in his senior year of high school, so a lot has happened in his life. With transitioning into moving into this town and all of that. I kind of wanted to see how much he's grown as a person. I figured this podcast would be a great way to share that with everyone, especially people that knew him, prior to high school. All my friends seeing him for the first time in 3 years were like fucking mind blown about how much he'd grown. So I was really excited about that. And it was a nice thing, to talk with my family members and all that. It was a nice way to, kind of start the snowball of, the episodes and then eventually lead into more friends of mine as time went on. So that was really good. Episode 6. This one is honestly probably my least favorite episode looking back. I don't know if I really should have made an entire episode about how I quit my job at a grocery store. I mean, and even now, it's like it's I think it's like number 5 most viewed out of all of the episodes that are available for viewing. So I'm not saying I'm going to take it down, because honestly I don't really have a reason to take it down. I think it's just more of like I just don't like it that much. I probably could have, I kind of, and I even said in the video, it's no ill will towards anybody I worked with. The only issue that I had was corporate. I don't like corporate. That was my thing. So that's why I made it. And I also wanted to talk about how I think retail as a whole just needs to have a wake up call and realize that we're just not going to be, we're tired of being treated like shit, and how these corporations kind of push this idea onto customers and entices people to feel entitled so they can make more money. But at the same time, you've got all of these people working minimum wage being treated like garbage as a result of how corporations run things. So that was kind of what I wanted to deliver with that episode. Just how I feel about that, especially in the last year, even with seeing tons of TikToks of people saying they quit their job, or they're standing up to their boss at their job at Walmart or whatever the fuck it is. And so that was kind of the message I wanted to deliver with that episode. I'm not sure if that was clear or anything. I did get some comments of people agreeing with me and all that. I got a lot of really nice, kind words from that. So if you have come from that episode, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. But yeah, that is honestly my least favorite episode. I'm not going to take it down because I'd rather not take down more podcasts. I've already taken down 5 of them. So I think I'd just like to keep it at that. I think I don't hate that episode. It's just not one of my favorites. Hey, look, guys, little benefit of watching the YouTube version is my dog. He made his debut in episode, I think, 29, but he's here again for the 1 year. It's only just because I'm the only one here right now, and he just wants attention. And since I'm recording, I'm not giving him attention, so I'm just gonna pet him for a little bit. I hope you guys don't mind. We'll keep going though. I can do 2 things at once. Episode 7 was my video where I talked about movies and shows that I would love to see on the Blu-ray format. That was just something I really wanted to do. That was just a solo topic I wanted to do from the beginning. So that's really all I have to say about that one. I'm pretty sure most of the stuff I discussed still has not come out on Blu-ray, or let alone been announced, and I don't really see that happening. It's just a video I really wanted to do at the end of the day. Episode 8 is one of the lost episodes. I'm not going to discuss that until a little bit later. Episode 9 was another solo where I talked about the Oscar nominations, which I didn't even watch the Oscars, so I don't even know why I made such a big deal out of that. What else? Book of Boba Fett had just rounded up, so I talked about that. The Marvel shows were just leaving Netflix, and since that episode has come out, those shows have popped up on Disney+. They were some of the first of the mature content to be released on the platform. And I also talked about the Nintendo Direct that had just happened, along with the announcement of the Mario Kart 8 Booster Course Pass DLC, which is pretty cool, by the way, despite the fact that most of the courses look like shit compared to the beautiful, realistic-looking tracks from the base game. It just looks like the style is just like night and day, and kind of looks a little weird, at least in my opinion. I think a lot of people share the same opinion, though. Episode 10 was the first of the class of 2019 guests. This one featuring my friend Edward. That one was a lot of fun to do. We talked about all sorts of stuff. That was the first time I had seen him since graduation, so it was a really good time to reunite with him and just talk about everything that had gone on in the last 3 years. And I really enjoyed my time with that. I've seen him a couple of times since. We've hung out. He had a little get together at his house, and I went to a Halloween party back in October that he was also at. So it was really great reuniting with Eddie and doing that. And I do plan on getting him on at some point again in the future, so stay tuned for that. Episode 11 featured my friend Mike Familetti, who from the beginning, when I first was even talking about the idea of doing a podcast back in 2017, he was a huge supporter of it, and he wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, dude, absolutely. And he's just been such a good dude to me, especially in the last year. We've gotten a lot closer. Like we knew each other in high school and middle school, but like we weren't like tight or anything. But honestly, we are a lot closer now. And he's been a great friend. He's been a great supporter of the podcast. He was one of the first people to buy merch and all sorts of stuff like that. So shout out to Mike for not only appearing on one episode, but two, probably a third one pretty soon with Dom. Next time, Dom, if work calls you in, say that your hamster died or something. That way we can do it. Episode 12 is another one of the lost episodes. Episode 13 was an episode featuring my friends Catherine and Chris, which, by the way, I'm recording this a little bit earlier than the anniversary. Today's the 19th as I'm recording, so happy birthday to Kat. She just turned 21. And also the episode featured her boyfriend Chris, who's a really great guy. We talked about Chris's car accident where his foot was nearly severed from his body. It was a pretty gruesome thing that happened to him. Of course, I'm so glad that he didn't die and he's all good now. So, of course, he's still living with what happened, and he told his story and all that. Of course, there's going to be lifetime struggles with something like that happening to you. And of course, I wish you the best, my friend. And I'm glad that you're doing better now, and we've been able to hang out a couple times. Episode 14 was a look back at some nostalgia with my friend Jake, who I'd really wanted to get on the podcast. And that one has risen, especially in the last couple of months, I've noticed. It had a good amount of views compared to a lot of them, but then it really started to get more. I think it's number 4 most viewed, if I'm not mistaken, out of the public episodes. I can probably check that right now. Yeah, it's number 4 out of the public episodes, which is crazy. So shout out to Jake. I'm planning on getting him on again at some point. So whenever that happens, we'll probably be talking about the Hatebreed concert we went to and stuff along the lines of that. But yeah, that's that. Also got a really nice comment from Kuro of the Ink Tank on that episode. So thank you to Kuro for that. He's also followed me on Twitter since. So shout out to Kuro, the artist of the Ink Tank. They do some really great stuff over there, especially if you're a Ben 10 fan. Lots of really great content about Ben 10, which, 5-6 years ago, that stuff just didn't exist on YouTube. But now they're making some of the best Ben 10 content out there. It's pretty great. You should definitely go check them out. Episode 15 featured a former coworker of mine, my friend Scott, which at the time was the longest. It was the longest episode at just over 2 hours. I think it was 2 hours and 24 seconds. We talked about all sorts of stuff in regards to a lot of it being in the music industry, specifically Kanye, because he had a lot of stories of going to shows and all sorts of stuff like that, and how he was nearly at the concert where Kanye had to stop the show after Kim Kardashian got robbed in Paris, and all sorts of stuff like that. That was a really fun one to do. When I had told him that I was starting a podcast, he was just really hype about it. He's even told me he wants to do his own podcast or even be a part of my podcast again, and he's absolutely going to be a part of it. He's going to come on again in the future. We're coordinating a podcast with our friends Ryan and Tom, who we also worked with at Stop and Shop. So that one's going to be pretty fun. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but it will happen at some point, so that's something to look forward to. Episode 16, probably one of the most infamous episodes of the podcast. I had to make a lot of cuts to this one, but this featured my friends Thomas, Phil, and Ethan. Having all 3 of them, I think, was a little crazy. But I love those guys to death, so I was just really happy to have them a part of it. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with that one. And it still is to this day the most viewed episode out of all of my GC friends that have been on the podcast. It got beaten by episode 29 because that one got shared like crazy with my brother and his friends. But that one has still been the most viewed guest episode featuring my GC friends. So. Huge shout out to Thomas, Phil, and Ethan. You guys are awesome. And at this point, I was putting out nothing but guest episodes. After episode 10, I kind of just made nothing but guest episodes. And that was mainly because I think I was just really amped about the fact that a lot of my friends wanted to be a part of this. And I kind of just put all my focus in that without even realizing that, damn, I just like wasn't really putting out the solos. I think I was also just disappointed by the fact that they weren't being viewed as much. And frankly, at this point, I've started to do more of them, like you guys have seen. But for a while, I don't know, I just didn't really want to do them because I wanted to put a lot of my focus into the guest episodes. And then I started getting comments saying like, oh, like this is more about your guests. You kind of have to like, you know, do it more about you. And, you know, I realized that like, shit, I kind of had the guest episodes kind of take over. So up until like the late 20s in the regards to episode number, I was doing nothing but guest episodes. And at this point, like I said, I've kind of tried to balance it out, and I'm going to continue to do that, and I'll get to that a little later. But for a couple months there, I was kind of just doing nothing but guest episodes. So the next one was with another former coworker of mine, Leif. That was the one where the Filthy Frank clip comes from that has over 200,000 views on TikTok. That one was really fun to do. Episode 18 features my friend Shimon, a.k.a. Mish. We talked about all sorts of stuff in regards to a lot of his music from high school. We talked about some those like challenges from like middle school, high school, like the Cinnamon Challenge and Salt and Ice Challenge, Bean Boozled, all sorts of stuff like that. Just reminiscing on a lot of stuff like that. I talked about his future in music, you know, the stuff he wants to do and all sorts of stuff like that. So that one's a really good watch if you want to go check that one out. Episode 19 is another redacted episode. Episode 20 was the first of the remote episodes that I decided to do. I did a test one with Liam, but I ended up not putting that one out because he was like, yeah, no, I don't know if I want to do that. And I was like, all right. So like we did it as like kind of like a test run. It was kind of like more for me to just like test the waters of doing a remote episode. I wasn't sure whether or not I really wanted to put it out or anything, but I ended up just not putting it out, as well as upon his request. So I ended up getting Cole Perrin on the podcast as the first remote guest. And of course, he's in Texas, so it was a pretty far gap between Long Island and Texas. But we made it work. It was just under 2 hours, so it was one of the longest episodes to date. And it was so much fun. It was a ton of fun talking to him about all sorts of stuff. We talked about, of course, the It video that he's probably most well known for, despite the fact that nobody knows it's him. Also, just a ton of other funny videos he's made over the years, and you know, stuff we talked about YouTube and stuff like that. Because, you know, we're both creators and we've been in the space for a very long time, so we both understand how it works. So that was just honestly just a very genuine like conversation that we could both like, you know, bounce off each other about things. Because like a lot of my friends, I love them to death. They're just not in the same field that I am. So there's not as much we can talk about, you know, in regards to content creation. So when I get another creator on, I think it's probably some of the best times I can have in regards to these podcasts, because we just know how it goes pretty much, I guess. Since we're both content creators, it's a lot easier to just, you know, like, because we, like I said, we both understand how things work and all that, and we're able to talk about that stuff. Because, like, you know, I can only talk about that kind of stuff with my friends so much, you know, that they'll either understand or that they'll even give a shit. So it's kind of just like, you know, having someone on like Cole was very good, because not only did it expand my content to an audience that was not my friends from high school, but it also gave me something else to talk about in regards to content creation. I was really grateful for that. So, and of course, Cole has been a big supporter of my channel. So I just want to say thank you, Cole, for being not only a good friend of mine, but also just, you know, being a great supporter of the podcast and all sorts of stuff like that, and coming on twice as well. And yeah, he's got a big future ahead of him. You know, now he's got a kid, and he's looking to write for SNL. He started doing stand-up comedy as well. We'll get to that in a little bit. Episode 21 was another redacted episode. And then episode 22 features my friend James Newhook. This was another remote episode. And by the way, I did not mean to do a bunch of remote episodes in a row. It just kind of happened. So that's all I really can say with that, honestly. James Newhook was great. We talked about a lot of really cool stuff in regards to our past of meeting each other back in 2017 through a couple of friends that we met, through YouTube and whatnot. And not only that, but also him pursuing filmmaking as he went to film school. He talked about a lot of the short films he's been working on and stuff like that. And he also rickrolled me on my podcast, which was honestly a pretty legendary moment in my opinion. So mad props to you for rickrolling me on my own podcast. It's the nice little benefits of doing remote episodes. You can just drop a link in the messages, and then I'll click it, and of course I'll get fucking rickrolled while we're recording. So fuck you, man. Also, episode 23 featured my friend Haley, which of course I would have rather done it in person, but she lives in Florida, so it is a bit harder to do that. I went to high school with her as well. She was also a part of the class of 2019. She was really great. We talked about her new job, helping and caring for marine life. She works with dolphins a lot, which is pretty cool. So if you want to go check out that one, we talked about all sorts of stuff like that. Episode 24 features Kyle Mon, a.k.a. Kyle from Kyle's Game Room, another YouTuber, just over 11,000 subscribers. Him and I have known each other for a couple years. I started watching him back in probably like 2014, 2015, probably something along the lines of that. Probably a little earlier. Honestly, I can't really remember exactly when I started watching him, but I sent a link out to literally everyone that I knew that I was starting the podcast. Like I sent out the link to the first episode to literally everybody. And he reached out to me and he's like, this is really cool and I'd love to be on it. And I was like, awesome. So we finally got that worked out. It went about 2 hours. It probably could have gone longer, but I had to go somewhere. So unfortunately we couldn't talk about like everything, but I do plan on getting him on at some point in the near future. So stay tuned for that. That one's going to be pretty fun. Episode 25 is the last of the redacted episodes, which I will address a little later. And then from here on out is just nothing but episodes you can currently watch. So episode 26 is probably one of my favorite episodes that I've made. It features my friend Travis, aka TV Sonic Gaming, one of my longest internet friendships ever. I think it's probably like my second longest. And what's great about it is that now he lives like a half hour away from me. Before it was like an hour, but now it's like a half hour. So I was like, dude, if I'm going to get you on my podcast, you might as well come here in person. So we waited until he was done with school for the semester, and then he came out to my house, and we had a nice 2 hour and 16-minute conversation. And at that point, that was the longest episode in person. And we just had a really good time. You know, like I said, he's another content creator, so he has that aspect in regards to having a conversation. And yeah, we were able to talk about all sorts of stuff. We had a lot of history in regards to making content together as far back as like 2011. So of course, when we were both little squeakers, and yeah, that was just a lot of fun to do. It was a great way to catch up with him, and we've been pretty close, especially ever since. You know, we've been talking back and forth. We text back and forth all the time. He's a great dude. He also just surpassed 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you have not checked him out, go to TV Sonic Gaming on YouTube and go watch his stuff. He makes some pretty cool stuff about game collecting and all sorts of stuff like that. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely go check out his stuff. And I took his advice, actually, because he had said to me, listen, like, I love the guest episodes, but I think you should do more of the solo stuff because it shows more about you. And I was like, dude, you're right. And then I realized, shit, I've been putting out nothing but guest episodes for the last, like, 3 or 4 months. I should probably spread them out a bit more and, like, you know, maybe make it more about me, because I'm really honestly just selling the podcast on my name alone. So I kind of have to make it more about me realistically, right? So therefore, the next episode I put out was a solo episode, and that one I talked about the first volume of Stranger Things Season 4. I talked about Sonic 2, the movie. I talked about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as those movies had just recently come out. Nintendo Switch Sports. I talked about Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. I think the Multiverse's closed alpha as well. There were a lot of things to talk about in that one, as I had not done a solo episode since February. So I think it was episode 9 all the way to episode 27. I put out no solo episodes. It was all just guest episodes. So from then on out, I made it a thing where I was like, I'm going to put out more of these because this is my podcast. I can only do so much when I have a guest on, and I think it kind of just takes away from what I'm doing, because when I bring a guest on, I'm highlighting them and what they do. So if that's all I'm doing, I'm kind of just, not really talking about the stuff that I like. So I was like, yeah, I guess I got to make more of these. And honestly, I enjoy making them. It's not that I hate making them. It's just a matter of realistically, the guest episodes are a lot more fun to make, so I'm more inclined to do those more. But I think I did them a little too much and was not doing solos at all. So I took Travis's advice. I put out a nearly 40-minute solo, and from then on out, I made the announcement for the summer that I would be putting out a new episode every Friday, because at that point, I had just started a new job, but they were only giving me once a week hours, so obviously not enough to pay the bills. But I had enough free time to where I was able to make a bunch more podcasts, and that's why there were so many throughout the course of February to September, because I didn't have a job, I had nothing else to do. So I put out a ton of those. Episode 28 features my friends Keanu and RJ. That one I was really excited to do because these two I had not really spoken to or seen at all since graduation. So it was really good to see them again. Keanu and I go back to like 3rd grade, and RJ I met in freshman year of high school because he went to private school in his early life. So I didn't know him because of that. But it was really great to reconnect with them, and I've been talking with them a lot ever since. I'm definitely getting Keanu on again once a certain thing is released. I cannot say what it is, of course, for his sake and the NDA that he signed. But once that comes out, Keanu will be on the podcast again. So that's all I'm going to say there. But yeah, that was a really fun one to do. It was really great catching up with them, talking about all sorts of stuff. And yeah, that one was just a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen that one, definitely go check it out. Episode 29 is the most viewed guest episode by far to this day, at 336 views as of right now. It features my brother and his friends David and RJ, which, by the way, these guys are great. They've been some of the coolest people in the world to my brother. They're really great people. RJ and I, in particular, we have a lot in common, so even outside of the podcast, and I've also worked with him now as well. We've connected on a lot of things. Like the other night we were playing Pokemon Go after work together, me, him, and my brother, and stuff like that. And David's great as well. He ended up bringing Brian to his prom with him, so my brother was able to hang out with all of his friends at their senior prom because he's a year younger than most of his friends. So that was really great. That ended up being what the thumbnail currently is. Having them in their suits, I figured it'd be a little funny to do that. Kind of just a benefit of changing all the thumbnails once I got the new logo for the podcast. In that episode, we kind of just talked about a bunch of stuff. We weren't really prepared to really do it. They just really wanted to do a podcast, and my brother really wanted to do another one, so I got them on. We're planning on doing another one pretty soon, at least me, Brian, and RJ. I don't know who the 4th person's going to be. We actually had done another episode prior with his friend John, but we ended up scrapping that one because I wasn't prepared. I thought my batteries were charged, but they weren't. And like the raw cut, I think, was like just under an hour, so it ended up being like a nothing podcast. And I just thought it wasn't really up to par, and all of us were just like, yeah, no, we probably could have done better. So we ended up scrapping that one, and then we ended up doing the one with David later on. So that was kind of the replacement for that. But I still want to get John on for an episode. So we're going to do that at some point. I don't know exactly when. We'll probably end up doing it at least before John and RJ go back to school. So that's, sometime in January. So we'll probably record that sometime in January. I don't know when that'll be out. But you'll see, I guess. So stay tuned for the future on that one. Episode 30 features John, my friend John from episode 2. This was his second time on the podcast. So he was one of the first returning guests from GC, other than the redacted episodes. And then Joe, our friend Joe, joined us for that as well, because he was really interested in being a part of that. Ran just under an hour, and we talked about all sorts of stuff. How Joe bit off a joystick on a controller after raging too much while playing either Call of Duty or Rocket League. Honestly, I can't remember. I don't think it matters though, because I think it's a little overboard if you're biting off a thumbstick. I think you've got other issues you gotta worry about. And then I also quizzed them on scores that Anthony Fantano gave popular albums, and despite neither of them knowing Fantano all that well, Joe ended up winning. And I kind of made it easy, where like I'd give like 2 points if they got the answer right, and then like 1 point if it was like one off. So the scores were a bit higher, because of that. But Joe ended up winning, and it was a lot of fun. It's a fun episode. You should go check it out. We had a lot of fun doing that. Laughs all the way through. It was just a good time. Episode 31 was another solo. I talked about Volume 2 of Stranger Things Season 4. I talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as a Nintendo Direct Mini that had just come out, along with the first couple episodes of Miss Marvel. Episode 32 features Liam for a second time. At this point, he had gone under the name Scheme Liam, and he started to release music. So I decided, let's do a podcast where we talk about this project he came out with. It was called That Kid on Doxy, which, by the way, it is available to stream on not only SoundCloud, but it's also on streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. You can listen to them on YouTube. I just love the fact that he went the extra mile to put them on streaming platforms. So I was really excited for that, and I also shot a music video for him and edited it. It's called McChicken. It also features some guest vocals from yours truly. That along with his song Park. So definitely go check those out. Liam, of course, is also the one that made the logo for the podcast, which I've got on my hoodie right here. So of course, shout out to Liam. Shout out to Scheme Liam. Go listen to his music and go check out the episode that we did. And go get yourself a Scheme Liam meal at McDonald's. Get yourself 2 McChickens, a medium fry, and a high C lava burst. You got yourself a fucking Scheme Liam meal. Episode 33 featured my friend Hannah. We talked about her journey in learning ASL and going to school for that, as well as a bunch of dead MMOs. And I went on a bit of a rant or ramble about Club Penguin rewritten and all the private servers and all that. We talked about Webkins and some other dead MMOs and shit like that. Episode 34, probably one of my least favorite solo episodes, just because of the simple fact that I didn't do enough research and realizing that Mac Miller's I Love Life Thank You was not a new project. I think I was just misled by the fact that Spotify said it was released in 2022, because technically, yes, it was, but also at the same time, this is a re-release of a mixtape from I think it was 2011. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but yeah, at this point, I've changed the title and description and all that. Obviously, I can't change the video itself, but I do apologize to the Mac Miller fans for butchering that. Like I said, even in the video, I wasn't too familiar with Mac Miller before his passing, but and I did listen to some of his music prior, but I just hadn't really delved into his discography. But at this point, I've listened to a lot more of his stuff, and I really enjoy what I have listened to. I still have yet to cover everything, but it's definitely a lot more than previously, and I'm really enjoying what I have listened to. And of course, rest in peace, Mac Miller. Easily one of the most unique of a lot of the rap artists that I've listened to in the last decade. I really like his style, and I Love Life Thank You is a really great example of what he can bring to the table. And it's a fucking shame that he passed away. And I'm just glad that a lot of his stuff is now being put on streaming, because it gives people like me a lot better way of listening to it. And it makes me hope that a lot of that stuff gets released at some point, even not even just with him, but with other artists. So, of course, though, in the most respectful way possible, because, of course, there are a lot of examples of posthumous releases that are butchered to shit. And I think I talked about that as well. I think that's because I thought it was a new release. So I was like, oh, wow, this is like a lot of material. And I thought, like, because some of the songs were shorter, I thought it was posthumous. I think that's kind of what misled me. But yeah, there was that. Also in that episode, I talked about the end of Miss Marvel Season 1, along with Logan and Deadpool being released on Disney Plus, and that being significant because those movies were R-rated, and we hadn't really seen any R-rated stuff on Disney Plus yet, other than the Netflix shows that had been brought over. So that was really cool. Also, I had seen Minions: The Rise of Gru, so I wanted to talk about that as well. And yeah, that was also a solo episode that I put together last minute because I didn't have an episode for that week. So the solos that I put out in the summer were basically last minute. So that's kind of like, because I ended up uploading them at like 11 p.m. But I was like, oh, it's still Friday, so I still did it. Even though it's like really late at night, it's still Friday. Obviously, at this point, I'm trying to make a bunch of them and have them in reserves, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. But yeah, I'm really trying to not make that a thing again. Episode 35 features Mike Familetti for a second time, along with our friend Eddie. It was also supposed to feature Dom, like I mentioned prior, but he actually got called into work that day, so unfortunately he could not join us for that. But I still wanted to make it happen, so I brought out Mike and Eddie to my house, and we had a nice conversation. I had also never met Eddie before, so it was nice to get to know him and talk about, their partying lifestyle that they have when they go to the city and all that kind of stuff. I brought out a copy of Mike's book that he wrote when he was 16 because I was like, this will be a little funny. I wanted to do it for the first time he was on, but I think I just didn't think to do it. So I ended up just not doing it, but I did it for the second one. So yeah. Also, I hope you got paid by Amazon, Mike. You probably didn't, but Amazon, if you didn't pay him, you owe this man fucking money, so give him his money. Also, within the time period of the first and second time Mike was on, he also had a really big viral moment with a TikTok that got like 17 million views. He put his face on a fish, and it was like the fish's reaction to a giant ball of snow landing in the water. So, I mean, if you've seen that, that was my friend Mike, and we talked about that in the podcast. Episode 36 featured my friend Christian Cueva. We talked about his journey doing a lot of EMS volunteering back in high school, along with him studying neuroscience in college. We talked about the Gilmore Girls because he's been obsessed with that show and all sorts of stuff like that. That one was a really good one as well. I had not seen him since high school, so it was a really good opportunity to talk to him about all sorts of stuff. And we go back as far back as like third grade and even before that. So it was really good to talk to him again. I would definitely love to get him on again. So Christian, let's make it happen, like probably in the summer or something like that. And then episode 37. This to date is the longest episode of the podcast at just over 3 hours. And it kills me that like the first half of Larlar's video was corrupted, and I tried everything to recover it, but I couldn't do it. I tried all sorts of methods, used a couple websites, used a bunch of YouTube tutorials on like going into the file and trying to fix it that way, but with coding and all that, but nothing worked. But I was able to get the second half still, and I didn't want to just let this podcast go to waste because it was over 3 hours long, and we talked about a lot of stuff, so I didn't want to just let it go to waste. So I ended up just putting a bunch of B-roll from our old YouTube videos on the screen in the process, because I didn't want to just have a still of him the entire time. I did that in the beginning just so you'd be like, okay, this is what he looks like. But then like for a good part of that video, it's a bunch of B-roll from our old videos that we've done together, videos that feature me in particular, as well as some matches from his X-Return tournaments that he's done prior. We talked about all sorts of stuff, as he's another one of my friends that I met through YouTube that I've known for over 10 years at this point. I think this year, 2022, marks 10 years because we met in 2012. We did Mario Kart 7 online videos through Skype back then, and that was a lot of fun. So, of course, huge shout-out to Larlar. Go follow him on Twitch. Hopefully he starts streaming more consistently very soon. Show him some love. Tell him I sent you over there. And yeah, that was a really fun one. I really enjoyed doing that one. That one was like a long time coming, and he was really happy to be a part of it. We're going to be doing another one, which will probably be in person at some point in the springtime. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that one. That one's going to be great. Whenever that does happen, I hope you guys are excited for that. I hope you stay tuned for it. Episode 38 featured Thomas as a returning guest. He was previously in episode 16. We came back for episode 38 as we had just gotten back from the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. So I decided let's make an episode about our history of going together, as he has gone to this convention with me every year that I've gone. Starting all the way back in 2016. We went in 2017, 2018, 2019, so 4 years in a row. And then, of course, the pandemic happens, so 2 years of us not going. And then we went again in 2022. That time it was just the two of us, and we still had a lot of fun. So I was like, you know what, let's make a podcast just about our history with the convention. And then it kind of spiraled into Thomas found out he was allergic to penicillin. He told the story about how he found out about that. Also, his addiction to Burger King in high school, and how he had a friend of us and I go with him to get those burgers for him one day. He asked for like 6 of them. I made a clip out of that. It was pretty funny. Got a good amount of views on Instagram. And yeah, that one was a lot of fun to do. And plus, reconnecting with Thomas after not really speaking too much throughout like 2020 and 2021. It was really good to talk with him again and see him like thriving and not really giving a shit about what other people think. Cause I used to call him out on that in high school, for like, putting up a facade, but now he's really just in his element, and I'm super proud of him. So huge shout out to Thomas. He's absolutely killing it. And of course, I love the man to death. And I do plan on getting him on again at some point in the future. Episode 39 was a special episode, as it was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina. John and I went to go visit his friend Mike, who's now also my friend. We got to visit him, and we went to the Outer Banks. So we talked about our trip doing that. Mike also talked about his horrible experience at going to Wingstop and having feathers on his wings, and them just not giving a shit about the fact that there are feathers on the wings, and them being like, yeah, what's the problem? And I got a couple comments on TikTok being like, lawsuit. So, I mean, that's up to him. But yeah, that was a lot of fun to do. I had a really good time with that. Episode 40 was the last of the summer weekly releases. That featured my friend Brian Stanko. That was really good to see him again. We hung out a bit in like 2020, like end of 2020, and all that. So I had seen him a little bit in 2020. But it had also been a while, with him being really busy all the time. It kind of just, led to us not seeing each other for a while. So it was really good to reunite with him and talk for about 2 hours, just, bullshitting on all sorts of stuff, stuff from high school and the music he's been making, the band he was part of, and all sorts of stuff like that. So a huge shout out to Brian. If you have not seen that episode, you should definitely go do so. And that was the end of my weekly summer releases. And at that point, I had gotten a new job. So naturally, the episodes started to be a bit more sporadic, and I ended up going a couple weeks without uploading. Of course, I do apologize for that. I didn't mean for that to happen. It just kind of did. But I ended up deciding to drop 2 solos the following week. Episode 41, to this day, is the shortest episode of the podcast, and it was basically just me talking about the whole Warner Brothers and HBO Max craziness that was going on, where a ton of content was being removed from HBO Max because of tax write-offs, which is like the worst reason something can be removed from a streaming service. Because, it comes to a point where it's like, isn't a streaming service supposed to be like an all access kind of thing where you can like watch a bunch of shows that aren't like not really circulating on cable anymore? It's like a good way to access older content. But then they just started removing a bunch of shows like Uncle Grandpa and Infinity Train and like a ton of episodes of Sesame Street, and people were just fucking up in arms as a result. And yeah, like it was a terrible situation, and honestly just hasn't really gotten better either. I'm even hearing they're starting to just remove popular shows because they just want to write them off, and it's like, dude, this is not the way to do it. You're like you're crumbling this service. And like HBO Max was honestly one of the better ones to come out of the last couple of years, and now it's in fucking shambles. And it's a shame, and I'm still really disappointed by it. So I really wanted to talk about that. So I made an episode about that. And then episode 42 was a solo, which I hadn't done in a couple weeks. So I had a lot to talk about as I'd seen a couple movies. So it ended up being just over an hour long. I talked about KSI's 2 fights in one night event that he had at the end of August. I also talked about a couple movies I'd watched, like Lightyear, Thor Love and Thunder, and Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Granted, those thoughts on were a little too late, as Lightyear had come out in June and Thor had come out in July. And Dragon Ball Super Superhero had come out in August, and then I released the episode in September. So I was like, are people even going to care? But I mean, I did it anyway because I really just wanted to talk about that stuff, and I hadn't had a chance to. But I do have an announcement about solos, just so stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. I'm going to get to that at the end of this. Episode 43 features the second appearance from Cole Perrin. So it was the first time a remote guest has returned, and up to now, he's the only person to have that currently. We talked about, a lot had happened in his life in the couple months spanning from April to September. Not only did he quit his day job, but he also started pursuing stand-up comedy. He also started doing a lot of production assistant work with HBO and Discovery. So there was a lot of that to discuss. We also talked about how social media is like a cesspool in regards to just shilling ads to you instead of like making it about social media, what the whole purpose of it was to begin with. And it was a good time though. We talked about how he has now reverted to using an iPod instead of using streaming services to listen to music, buying CDs and doing it the old-fashioned way. I just thought it was really inspiring. And yeah, we talked about, all sorts of stuff like that. I highly recommend you go check it out. We did a lot of really cool stuff in that episode, a lot of really cool conversations. Episode 44 was another solo, where it was a little bit late to the party, so of course the views on that are not as great. But I talked about the D23 Expo and all the announcements made at that, as well as the Nintendo Direct. So honestly, that's probably why the video didn't do as well, because it was kind of jumbled with like a bunch of really big things meshed together, along with talking about cars on the road as well. I kind of just threw it in there. So I think from now on, I'm gonna try and make the solo episodes a bit more centered on like if it's like a big event, I'm going to dedicate the episode to that event and then make another one about another thing. So maybe the episodes won't be as long, but they'll be a bit more focused. So that's going to be something I'm going to try and do a bit better moving forward. I will address that more later in the episode. Episode 45, I talked about more solo news topics. Deadpool 3 had just been given its first look in regards to announcing that Hugh Jackman would be returning as Wolverine. Also, James Earl Jones surrendering his likeness to Disney so they could use his voice and AI technology and have him like return as Darth Vader, maybe even after his passing. Of course, because we all die eventually. So I guess like kind of to preserve Darth Vader even after he's gone, so that way they can use Darth Vader in future Star Wars projects. And then I made it into like a conversation about AI in general and how like advanced it's become. And we've seen that more and more even in the last couple months, even after I recorded that in September. I also talked about the beef between Drake and Anthony Fantano. I talked about Deji fighting Mayweather. Lil Nas X had just dropped a new song. So yeah, there was that one. And then episode 46, I sat down with LC Bailey over a Discord call. We had another remote episode, and I talked with him about all sorts of stuff. He had recently visited the U.S. for the first time, so we talked about his experience with that and trying New York pizza for the first time, meeting Lar and Jarek in person, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then episode 47, we talked about the Mario movie trailer, James Gunn becoming the new CEO of DC Studios, Henry Cavill returning as Superman, but of course that aged like milk because now he's not returning as Superman. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future episode. I don't know. I feel like it might be old news by the time I get around to it. But yeah, we talked about that kind of stuff. Episode 48 was completely MCU focused. I talked about two recent projects. I talked about She-Hulk as well as Werewolf by Night, which was an hour-long special presentation, and She-Hulk being a 9-episode series. So, yeah, it was kind of weird meshing those two together because they're two very different projects, but I figured since they were both MCU related, I might as well throw them together. Episode 49 was my spoiler discussion on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. That one I released as soon as possible. So within that same week, I released episodes 48 and 49. And that's why it took so long to finally drop episode 50, because on top of scheduling conflicts, I got sick the week of Thanksgiving. So because of that, I wasn't able to put out episode 50 immediately. So I went, unfortunately, like about 2-3 weeks without releasing an episode. And I'm going to try not to let that happen anymore. But I was able to get Billy on. My good friend Billy, we go back as far as like kindergarten and first grade. Yeah, we've known each other a long time. And it was really great to, and especially since we hadn't really spoken for a long time either. We kind of had parted ways for a long time. But it was great to, like, have a nice conversation with him. And to this day, it is now the longest in-person episode at just under 2.5 hours. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Talk about all sorts of stuff, Smash Brothers, the gaming industry, the new Pokemon games, if we feel they've declined in quality over time. And yeah, it was just a really good conversation overall. I highly recommend you guys go check that one out. I had a really good time making it. And yeah, that leads us to the most recent episodes. Episode 51 was the start of my little mini series where I'm going to be covering all the seasons of Breaking Bad and giving my thoughts on them as I'm watching the show for the first time. Unfortunately, I've been a little busy with making a bunch of these in the last 2 weeks, so I haven't gotten around to starting season 2. But you will be seeing a discussion on season 2 at some point in January. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to release it, but as soon as I'm done with season 2, I will be recording the discussion just like I did with season 1, and then I'll schedule it to upload whenever that does come around. So you will see that at some point in January. That is the goal, at least with that. But that episode was basically just me talking about season 1 of Breaking Bad with a pretty blind perspective, as, like I said, I haven't seen the show, so there wasn't much for me to go off of. But I wanted to do it, and it was an idea I had. I figured, I think it was interesting enough, especially if it's a really popular show and, you've never seen it before. And honestly, you could probably tell that I've never seen it before if you watched it. Because I'm sure, like I said, there's a lot of things that happen in the show that I'm not aware of that I will learn as I watch it. And I guess you'll see the evolution of that as time goes on. But yeah, and then episode 52, the most recent episode, was another out-of-state podcast, the second one. This time I was in Rhode Island, and I visited Newport. My friend Henry lives there. I used to work with him at Stop and Shop, along with Jake, who's also in the episode, as well as Joe in the background, who was a little too hungover to be on the podcast. But it was a lot of fun. We had a really good time doing that. I had been dying to get Henry on. I remember telling him about the podcast before I started it, and he was like, dude, that sounds amazing. Like, he even had a microphone that he was going to use, like, because he kind of wanted to start his own podcast at some point. That has yet to happen, Henry. When's that podcast coming out? What are we doing there, Henry? But yeah. That was episode 52. We talked about him living in Rhode Island and how that is for him, and what he's doing there in regards to fixing boats and stuff like that. And we talked about video games. We talked about some people on TikTok, which, by the way, Titanic Fan 97 has seen the short that I made about him, and he gave me a nice little comment and even followed me on Instagram. So thank you to Titanic Fan 97 for that. Much appreciated, my guy. And yeah, that's the first 52 episodes of the podcast. That's all I did this past year. So, in regards to the future, I do have some stuff I've already recorded and I'm going to give you a bit of a sneak peek to that. So I present to you a little video that I have created as a result. So please take a look at this.
Wait, why are you nervous?
Now this is gonna be a period I, not a period O.
I'm gonna kill you.
This is not recording. Is it recording?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we'll cut it out.
That's good. We haven't spoken to each other in like forever, so this will be a great time to catch up.
Welcome to the Jimmy Mullen Podcast, episode 947.
That, my friends, is a sneak peek to what you can expect for the rest of this year, along with the beginning of 2023. And I'm here to announce that there will be 2 more episodes for the year 2022. The first one, releasing on Christmas Day, episode number 54, features my friend Danny Casal, aka Cool Man Coffee Dan, who's had a pretty good last couple years, I will say, in regards to virality and content creation. So it was really good to sit down with him. I haven't seen him in like 4 years. So it was really nice to get to see him again and have this really nice conversation about all sorts of stuff and content creation. And like I said, with Cole and Travis, having that perspective, at least with both of us having it, it made the conversation a lot more interesting in regards to that. And Danny, it's the same thing. He's in that field, so he understands all of that. And we were able to really, thrive and, connect on that level. So I'm really excited for you guys to see it. It's already finished, and I love it. It's honestly one of my favorite episodes I've done, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. So it will be releasing on Sunday, December 25th, Christmas Day. And maybe if I'm feeling a little feisty, I might drop it on Christmas Eve. I don't know. But I'm aiming to drop it on Christmas Day, December 25th. So I hope you guys are excited for that. And then episode 55 will be the final episode of the year. And that will be similar to the episode I released at the end of last year, where I'll be taking a look at the last year, 2022, in regards to entertainment, movies, music, video games, television, anime, all sorts of stuff that piqued my interest in the year 2022. So I'm really excited to share that with you all. And that's it for the rest of this year. As for 2023, I also showed in that I have an episode with my friends Sarah and Justin that I will be releasing in 2023, early in January, along with my friend Jarek Brual. We had a nice conversation. He's another fellow content creator. He was also on Jeopardy this past year, so we talked about that, along with a bunch of the really cool people that he's met over the last year, as well as the last couple of years that he's been out. He's been to VidCon, so we met a bunch of creators there and doing all sorts of events in New York City and things like that. So it was really good to sit down with him and talk about that. So I'm going to be having them on. Those episodes will be coming out in January. In regards to the future of this podcast, 2022 was a year of heavy experimentation. As well, I knew I wanted to do a podcast for years. I didn't really know how to go about it. Like I said before, I went months with just doing guest episodes because I was just really hyped about the idea that, I could do this with my friends and they really wanted to be a part of it. So I kind of just let that take over. And I ended up, losing a bit of focus on the solo episodes, which is what I wanted to do from the beginning, as I wanted this to be generally a solo podcast. So, in regards to solo episodes in 2023, I plan on releasing more of them. They'll probably be more common than guest episodes. I think, having the idea of having guest episodes a bit more spread out makes them a bit more exciting, I think, honestly, personally. I also plan on taking the solo news roundup kind of thing that I've been doing the last year, and I'm going to make it just a once a month thing. I'm going to take all of the stuff for each month, and I'm going to compile it all together, whether it's like things in the news and entertainment, or a new album, or new song releases, or new movie releases. I will cover all of that at the end of the month and probably release it either at the very end of each month or the beginning of the next month. And I'll call it like, I don't know, the cool stuff of June 2023 or something like that. Obviously, it's a bit of a working kind of thing. Like I said, even before, I might call it like Jimmy Rambles or something like that. I don't know. I might make it like a sub-series for the podcast. But yeah, there's a lot down the pipeline in regards to that. And even for other solo episodes, I plan on doing similar to how I covered Black Panther Wakanda Forever in November, like nice little spoiler discussion. I plan on doing the same for other MCU projects, like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, The Marvels, and not only that, but also some other movies, specifically the Super Mario Brothers movie. I really want to do something like that for that movie. And in regards to episodes as a whole, like I said, the solo episodes are probably going to be a lot more frequent. I'm planning on sticking to one episode a week, with the exception of these little monthly solos. So there might be a couple times where there will be 2 episodes in a week, but that'll only be like once a month or something like that. Unless I don't have something prepared, then I'll just drop the solo for that month in regards to the news and stuff like that. There will be other solos throughout every month because, like I said, I do have ideas for other things. I'm going to continue to discuss Breaking Bad as I'm watching that for the first time, and I plan on doing the same for Better Call Saul once I finish Breaking Bad. And I'm going to do it with other shows as well. Also revisiting things that I haven't seen in years. I plan on, covering some stuff like that, or even movies I'm watching for the first time. If I can make a full podcast out of that, I'll do that. There's a lot of experimentation that I'm doing. I think 2022 was a year of really finding my footing, but I think I'm going into 2023 with a better idea of what I want to do with the podcast. And if I keep it going, I might be at 100 episodes by the end of 2023. So I'm really excited for the future. I have a lot of ideas for what to do. And like I said, this past year has been incredible. Like I said, I went in with no expectations. I didn't know if anyone was going to care or even if I was going to do it for this long. I mean, I spent a lot of money on this equipment, so of course I wanted to make the most out of it, but I just didn't really know what I was going to be getting into. But honestly, I couldn't be happier. I'm loving what I'm doing right now. I don't have like crazy numbers or anything, but I'm not even worried about the numbers. I'm just doing it because I love doing it, and I'm so grateful for that. And I cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have been giving me over the last year. It's been fantastic. Whether you've been around my content for a number of years or you're just being introduced to my content because of the podcast, I thank you for sticking around. You guys are awesome, and I really appreciate you. Now, in regards to the 5 episodes that are missing from the lineup, I refer to them as redacted episodes. They feature my ex-girlfriend. That is the simple answer as to why those episodes are not available for viewing. I have no intentions of putting them back up. I'm no longer with that person, and I'm just going to leave it at that. There's not really much else to say, but I just figured I'd rip the Band-Aid off and let you all know. In case anyone is wondering, I have gotten a couple comments, and some people have asked, like, hey, where's the episode number 8? Where's episode 12, 19, 21, 25? Yeah, that's the reason those episodes are missing, and I'm just going to leave it at that. This is the one and only time I will be addressing it, and yeah, that's the story with that. Before I end today, like I said, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting over the last year. You guys are incredible. And I'd also like to remind you all, if there's any way you'd like to support the podcast in any way, I have had some people who've asked me in regards to that. I have a link in the description you can click. If you go to anchor.fm/JimmyMullen/support, you can choose a monthly payment of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99, and that just goes into supporting the podcast, just showing your love for the content. It's not like a Patreon where you get like benefits or anything. It's more of just a way to support the podcast without really expecting anything in return. Just like a donation, I guess you could call it. I don't have a Patreon.
I figured if I'm going to launch one, I might as well just wait until it's guaranteed to even get anything, because honestly, I don't even have any people on the support list right now, but I figured I'd just throw it out there in case anyone is interested in that. But also another way you could support the podcast is by getting merch. I know obviously I'm not like a big content creator, and it's kind of weird for someone with 100 subs to be selling merch, and frankly, the sales have not been crazy. Obviously, like I said, I was not expecting people to be like 1,000 people to be buying Jimmy Mullen Podcast merch, but it does exist. You can get the logo on a hoodie or a t-shirt, or you can get the Sherbert logo or that picture of me holding the Dr. Bob that Henry took. It's all available at jimmymullen.co. And to celebrate the holidays, for the rest of the year, I'm doing a holiday sale. So if you use code HOLIDAY at checkout, you'll get 25% off your order. And that's on everything in the shop. So whether it's the older beta logo stuff or the new logo and all that, it's all on sale. So make sure you get it while it's hot. 25% off, jimmymullen.co. Thank you for your support. You guys are incredible. And yeah, also, thank you for getting this channel to over 150 subscribers this year. Also, I have over 250 followers on the podcast's Instagram page now, and over 850 on TikTok, which is freaking nuts. Obviously, I wish that would transition over to other platforms, but if you have come from TikTok, I just want to say thank you for sticking around. You guys are amazing, and thank you for following and sticking around if you have. I really appreciate your support, and it has truly meant the world to me. You guys are amazing, and whether you've been around my content for, like I said, whether you've been around my content for years or you're just tuning in, I can't thank you enough for your support over the past year especially, and even beforehand in the 10 plus years I've been making content. So with that said, I hope you guys have a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Ramadan, all the holidays that are celebrated in the month of December. I hope you have a great one. And while I will have more episodes throughout the rest of the year, I want to say Happy New Year as well. I hope 2023 is fantastic for all of you. And yeah, with that said, I have a playlist where you can check out all of the episodes of the podcast. If you'd like to check any of them out, you can do so by going to the YouTube channel as well as using the end card and tapping on the podcast. You could even check out the first episode and do a little side by side. Be like, hey, look at how much happier he is a year later. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. If you're on the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, whatever it may be sure to write a review, leave a rating. Let me know what you guys think of the podcast. If you're on Spotify, let me know what you thought of the episode using the Q&A feature. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the bell, leave a like, leave your comments. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you all. And I'll see you guys on Christmas Day with the Cool Man Coffee Danny Casal episode of the Jimmy Mullen Podcast. So yeah, take it easy. Peace out.